Hi everyone, my name is Taylor Brumfield. I am a product and beauty photographer. Today we are going to go over some of my favorite approaches, tips, and tricks for if you are just starting out in product photography. Product photography has very quickly become my bread and butter and the vast majority of my business. Within my past 6 years as a product photographer, I have worked with large brands in Sephora, Ulta, and other big box stores, as well as small brands and brands that are just getting started. A lot of the techniques I'm going to be showing today are definitely starter friendly, which is great, but they are still techniques that I use to this day and almost every single day in my work. A really integral part of pre-production is creating a shots list and mood board with the client. I usually collaborate with the client to see what their needs are and to make sure that I am able to meet them with my skill set and the things that I'm able to pull in order to do the production, as well as gathering any teams or any teammates that I might need to do the production. So with any client, I always make sure to have a shots list with their A to Z of what kind of shots they'll need for a comprehensive set that they can use to help leverage their business and their products, as well as a mood board so that visually everybody is set up for success. Although a lot of the products that I tend to play with when I am doing personal work or practice shots are PR that have been sent to me by clients. When I was first starting out, I tended to go to a outlet store and grab products or just use products that I already had in my bathroom. And that's how I would make sure that I was not only able to approach brands with usable photos, but that I was able to practice on products that resemble the products that I would need to shoot later. It's really important to figure out the placement of your lighting in relation to your product. For this shot, I noticed that the brand generally does a lot of really short shadows as if the sun were at its highest. And so I wanted to place the light almost directly over the product so that I would still get a beautiful reflection from the glass, but still have a relatively short shadow. Something that I really like about working with strobes is that you are able to manipulate the light exactly how you want it. I generally will go with the FJ400 because I often need a lot of power and I need lights that are able to recycle very quickly, even if I'm pushing them to their highest setting. So with my FJ400 and the different modifiers that I have, I can create beautiful lighting and beautiful gradients, but I still like to use the light without any modifiers because it replicates sunlight without having to deal with the sun moving around or the clouds. So I just like using my strobes because I can get the light exactly how I want it and it's able to stay that way. Something that I've really been enjoying recently is my collapsible 2-in-1 backdrop. I really like it, especially if I need to travel outside of my studio because it collapses down into a manageable little package, but it also expands up into a good sized wall. So whenever I have to do a white wall or an e-commerce shot with a wall or a video shoot with a wall, something like that, I like to use my 2-in-1 black and white backdrop that is both collapsible and expandable. Something that I always have on hand is black and white foam core. You can get that just about anywhere. They're all of 50 cents and you can cut them up into different shapes. You can cut holes in them and you can use them for fill and for flagging light, as well as helping you with your reflections and helping to block light in. If you're working with harder light or soft light, you can use them for a lot of different things. Something that's really useful is taking a square of foam core and cutting a hole in it and putting it on the front of your lens, and this helps control any reflections coming off of your camera and your surrounding background. As always, I use my Calibrate color checker card to make sure that my white balance is perfect, as well as to make sure I have color consistency between my shots. When working with brands and different companies, it is extremely important to make sure that your colors are exactly how they are in real life. These companies spend a lot of money to perfect their packaging and their products, so they want to know and have faith in you as a photographer that you are able to represent their products perfectly, and this includes making sure that your colors are calibrated and that the shots are perfect between sets. Something that's really important, especially if you're working with a brand that might be smaller or might have a tighter budget, is making sure that all of your photo or content assets are not only super high utility, but that the set all works with each other. So it needs to be comprehensive and cohesive. In this first batch of content, I wanted to make sure that I had the implement of hard light in all of my different shots. Even if the hard light was used differently between shots, I wanted to make sure that simple element was still there to tie all of the photos together. In that first shot, that simple hard light e-commerce shot, I had a hard shadow. It was nice and short. In my next shot, I ended up going with a hand model, and they modeled the product against my collapsible wall. I still wanted to use the idea of hard light here. What I like to address when I'm using hard light is just making sure that my labels are really, really visible, especially if the label or the product is very reflective, because as you can see here, the product was shining or pointing directly at the light, and so all of that reflection obscured the label. So I literally just had my model turn the product slightly. So it was like this directly at the light. I just kind of had them turn it like this. And that way the light was feathered across the product. So it was still directional at the product, but it wasn't shining directly at the label. So you are still able to see the product. You can still see the shadow. You can still see the shape of the product, but now your label is also visible. Sometimes when you're working with clients, and usually when you're doing your own personal projects, you only have one piece of product or one of the packaging. And so sometimes you're going to need to do what's called compositing, where you take multiple shots and take pieces from each shot and composite them down into one shot. So with this product, I wanted one of the shots to be, the final shot will be multiple of that one packaging in the final shot, but I only had the one. So I took a bunch of different shots with my packaging in different positions throughout my frame. And then I'm going to take each bottle from the different shots and mask them onto a base layer. And that way my final shot looks like it has multiple of that product. So here you can see I took my one bottle and I took a bunch of different shots. I didn't move my camera, but I moved the bottle around, and that way I have the proper perspective on each of these shots. So the perspective doesn't change, the positioning of the packaging changes. And then in post-production, I can then take each of my different packages and mask them onto one base layer. And that way it looks like there's multiple products in the photo, but I was only working with the one package. So far in this shoot, I've been able to get away with one light, which is a great starting point, and you can definitely get a lot done with one light. However, sometimes you are going to have to use multiple lights. So for the next few shots, I'm going to be using one main light and one fill light. All right, so originally for this set, I wanted to do a hard light backlight and have the shadow come to the front of the product. And it worked really nicely for the shadow, but the problem that I ended up coming across was that the label of the product was not very well lit. And so I tried to use a white card, some white foam core, to try to pop some light up onto it. But in popping the light up, it created a gradient across the shadow of light to dark. And I didn't want that. I wanted a illuminated label, but a really clean, consistent shadow. So what I went ahead and did was I added a second light. I used a second FJ400, and I used the Rapid Box Switch Octa in medium. And I just added that as a little bit of fill. It's a perfect size Octabox for product photography because in comparison to the size of the packaging, it's a good sized modifier. So I just have it really close to the set so that it's very nice round light, but at the same time, it's not going to add any kind of directionality. It's not going to add to the shadow. It's just going to fill the whole scene. So now my label can be seen properly. As a beginner product photographer, you may not have a lot of props, and that's totally okay. I recently picked up 2 wall shelves, and I've been using them as blocks and to help me shape my light. So what I originally wanted to do was create a corridor of light around my product, and I blocked off my lighting using my 2 blocks, and it was fine, but it wasn't necessarily giving me exactly what I wanted in terms of shape and how clean and crisp the shadows were. So I went ahead and used my Lindsay Adler optical spot. I got a window gobo. I got a really cool shot with my window gobo. So there's a shadow that looks like a window in one of the shots. And then I took the gobo out and I used these little sliders to then shape that corridor of light going towards my product. So with the spot, I was able to focus the light exactly how hard I wanted it to go. And then because it's a beam of light, it's way more directional. My shadows were also a lot more clean. So that's why I went ahead and used my optical spot. And then I still used my second light with the rapid box switch octa in medium. I still had it on my second FJ400, and I used that just as a little bit of fill. So I just got done using 2 different modifiers. I played with the rapid box switch 2x3, put that on my light, used it as my main and only light, and I got some really interesting shots of a splash shot on a golden mirror, which I thought was fun. I thought a really cool way to show off this product was to do a droplet shot. Now today I used vegetable glycerin to get a pretty decent droplet. Usually I use clear shampoo because it's a little bit more viscous and gets me these really long droplets, but today I went with the glycerin and I was able to show off how nice and thick the product was. Although the glycerin is clear and the product itself is yellow, I can always go back in post-production and color the droplet yellow to match the product. The really cool thing about product photography is that you really don't need a lot of space and you don't need a lot of gear. I was able to get a lot done today with just 2 lights, 2 modifiers, and our Lindsay Adler optical spot. And it's really easy to do, really easy to manipulate the light, and you can get some great photos out of it. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know which photo is your favorite.